When a woman was taking a morning stroll through Limer Park in California with her 2-year-old daughter, she saw what she thought looked like an abandoned mannequin near the sidewalk. On looking closer, her eyes were met with a horrific sight that she swears will haunt her for the rest of her life: the body of a young naked woman sliced clean in half at the waist. This is the unsolved case of Elizabeth Short. Welcome back to Tavern Crime Chronicles. We explore strange, mysterious, chilling and unsolved cases. If you have the nerve for fascinating stories, this is your channel. Today's story takes us to Massachusetts. Officially, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is a state in the New England region of the northeastern United States. It borders the Atlantic Ocean and Gulf of Maine to its east, Connecticut and Rhode Island to its south, New Hampshire and Vermont to its north, and New York to its west. Massachusetts is one of the original 13 states of America, the 7th smallest of the American states by total area. Its capital, Boston, known for its beautiful sceneries, attracts tourists all year long. With a population of 7 million friendly inhabitants, Massachusetts is home of a diverse range of people from different races and nationalities all over the world. And in the southernmost neighborhood of Boston is Hyde Park. Also known as a small town in the city because of its suburban feel, is where Elizabeth's story begins. Elizabeth Short, or Betty Short as she was commonly known, was born on July 29, 1924 in Hyde Park, Massachusetts, to Cleo and Phoebe Short. Elizabeth had 4 sisters, 2 older, Virginia and Dorothea, and 2 younger, Eleanora and Muriel. In 1926 the family moved to Medford, Massachusetts, and Elizabeth grew up in that town. Her father, Cleo Short, made miniature golf courses, but in 1930 he left his family. Cleo parked his car near a bridge to make it look as if he had killed himself. Phoebe Short was left to raise her daughters alone, living in Salem Street. After a few years, Cleo Short wrote to Phoebe and asked to be forgiven, but nevertheless, she wouldn't take him back. Elizabeth Short was a pretty girl with blue eyes and brown hair. However, Elizabeth suffered from asthma, so in 1940 she was sent to the warmer climate of Florida for the winter months. She worked as a waitress. Elizabeth returned to Medford in the spring. She went to Florida again in the winter of 1941 and returned to Medford in the spring of 1942. Elizabeth developed a passion for the movies in her youth, and when she turned 19, she decided to visit her father in California. She stayed with him for a while, but it was not long before he kicked her out for not doing anything with her life. Apparently, he also wasn't enamored of the fact that Elizabeth was dating a lot of different men. In January 1943, Elizabeth got a job as a civilian clerk in Camp Cook, an Army camp 10 miles north of Lompoc, now known as Vandenberg Air Force Base. She worked there while living with an U.S. Army Air Force sergeant who reportedly abused her. She left Lompoc in late August for Santa Barbara. However, on September 23, 1943, aged 19, she was arrested at a local bar for underage drinking in Santa Barbara. Juvenile authorities sent her back to Massachusetts, but she returned instead to Florida, making only occasional visits to her family near Boston. It should be noted that despite her conviction for underage drinking, as an adult Elizabeth did not drink or smoke. She was also a courteous woman who did not swear. And while in Florida, at the end of December 1944, Elizabeth Short met Major Matthew M. Gordon in Miami Beach. The couple soon got engaged. Tragically, Major Gordon was killed in a plane crash on August 10, 1945, just days before the end of the Second World War. In July 1946, Short relocated to Los Angeles to visit Army Air Force Lieutenant Joseph Gordon Fickling, an acquaintance from Florida, who was stationed at the Naval Reserve Air Base in Long Beach. Short spent the last 6 months of her life in Southern California, mostly in the Los Angeles area. Shortly before her death, she had been working as a waitress and rented a room behind the Florentine Gardens nightclub on Hollywood Boulevard. She has been variously described and depicted as an aspiring or would-be actress. According to some sources, she did in fact aspire to be a film star, though she had no known acting jobs or credits. On January 19, 1947, Elizabeth returned to her home in Los Angeles after a brief trip to San Diego with a man named Robert Manley, known as Red because of the color of his hair, a married salesman she had been dating. They spent the night in a motel, but Manley said they did not sleep together. The next day, Thursday, January 9, 1947, Manley took Elizabeth to the Los Angeles bus station where she deposited her luggage. He then dropped her to the Biltmore Hotel around 6:30 p.m. where Short was to meet her sister who was visiting from Boston that afternoon. Unfortunately, where Elizabeth went after saying goodbye to him and what she did in the next 6 days is a mystery. On the morning of Wednesday, January 15, 1947, a woman named Betty Berzinger was walking with her 2-year-old daughter through Los Angeles' neighborhood of Limer Park when she saw what she thought was an abandoned mannequin. She soon realized that the body was a corpse and grabbed her daughter, running for the nearest phone to call the police. The ensuing investigation was led by the Los Angeles Police Department. The FBI was asked to help, and it quickly identified the body in just 56 minutes. In fact, after getting blurred fingerprints via sound photo, a primitive fax machine used by news services, from Los Angeles, the young woman turned out to be a 22-year-old Hollywood hopeful named Elizabeth Short. Identifying the body was actually fast because Short's prints appeared twice in the FBI's massive collection. First, she had applied for a job as a clerk at the commissary of the Army's Camp Cook in California in January 1943. Second, she had been arrested by the Santa Barbara police for underage drinking 7 months later. The Bureau also had her mug shot in its files and provided it to the press. The body of Elizabeth Short had been cut in half at the waist with a sharp instrument and drained of blood, leaving her skin a pallid white. Her cheeks had been slashed from the corners of her mouth to her ears to make a grotesque parody of a smile, creating an effect known as the Glasgow smile. There were also other lacerations on her thigh and breasts where entire portions of flesh had been sliced away. Elizabeth's arms were raised over her head and bent at the elbows, and her legs were apart. The lower half of her body was positioned a foot away from the upper, and her intestines had been tucked neatly beneath her buttocks. The lack of blood at the scene indicated Elizabeth had been killed at another location then dumped on the plot. The killer had also washed the body. No attempt was made to conceal the body. It seems whoever killed her wanted to shock people by leaving the body in plain view. Medical examiners determined that she has been dead for around 10 hours prior to the discovery, leaving her time of death either sometime during the evening of January 14 or early morning hours of January 15. The autopsy was performed, and a report revealed the cause of death was a cerebral hemorrhage from lacerations and shock caused by blows to the head and face. Elizabeth was anatomically normal, and she was not pregnant. However, the medical examiner discovered that the victim may have also been raped, but no sperm was found. Her mother, Phoebe May Sawyer, a professional bookkeeper, then was called to identify the body. The detective in charge was skeptical about shocking the 50-year-old with horrible news and told her on phone that her daughter had won the contest and he would personally fly her into Los Angeles to avoid journalists who were already fishing for news. She was later dubbed the Black Dahlia by the press for her rumored penchant for sheer black clothes and for the Blue Dahlia movie out at that time. This name was created and popularized by the media and news reporters like the Los Angeles Herald-Express, which were among the first ones to arrive at the scene of crime and actually took many photos of the corpse. A massive investigation began, but the killer was never found. As the last person to see Elizabeth Short alive, Red Manley was an obvious suspect. However, he passed 2 lie detector tests and he had an alibi. Red Manley died in 1986. There were many other suspects, but none could be linked to the murder. On January 21, a person contacted the press claiming to be Black Dahlia's killer and stated, "Expect some souvenirs of Beth Short in the mail," and 3 days later, a post-service worker discovered an envelope. The envelope was addressed to the Los Angeles Examiner and other Los Angeles papers with the words being cut and pasted from newspaper clippings. Short's birth certificate, business cards, photographs, and pieces of paper with names written on them were found inside the envelope along with an address book that didn't belong to Short. On the same day, January 24, a black shoe and a handbag were recovered by the police about 3 kilometers from where Short's body was discovered. The items were confirmed to have belonged to Short. After it happened, close to 50 men and women went to the LAPD claiming to be the killer. This made it very hard for police to determine the culprit. There were numerous suspects throughout the years, but there was never enough evidence to charge anyone. There were multiple theories on the murder and how it could have been linked to other murders. Some detectives believe that the same person that committed the Cleveland torso murders also killed Elizabeth Short. Another viable theory at the time was that Short's murder was linked to the lipstick murders. Many believe that the main reason that the murder was unsolved was because of the media's interference in the investigation. Officers and detectives stated that reporters were walking over evidence and withholding information that they received from calls to their offices. At one point, the reporters were in the LAPD station and were just freely answering phones that could have been tips for the investigation and withholding the information. To this date, no charges were ever filed against anyone, and no one has been arrested for the horrific murder of Elizabeth Short. And given how much time has passed, there's a high chance that the killer is already dead now. To this date, this case remains an unsolved cold case with many new theories being formed all the time. She was buried in Mountain View Cemetery, Oakland, California in Alameda County. And as the Hollywood hopeful's soul rests in peace, it gets me asking the question, what really happened to Elizabeth Short? Could she have been an attempt at a science experiment by an evil medical student at the University of Southern California Medical School? Could the case have been solved had the media not been a busybody in police's business? As usual, share your thoughts in the comments section down below. And if you like the way I presented this case, remember to like this video, share and subscribe if you haven't. See you next time.